Hi, everybody. It's great to be back here again. Today is a very special day. It will go down in history on Hoshana Rabbah, the special day. We call it the Great Salvation. And it's unbelievable how we see the hand of God and everything on the way this terrible war began 2 years ago. On Simchat Torah, which we're going to celebrate tonight and tomorrow, and Shmini Atzeret, and the way it ended literally in a full cycle, exactly, precisely on Hoshana Rabbah, the day of the great salvation, which is the holiday. This is a time of redemption. The holiday of Sukkot reflects the redemption of Israel, as we spoke about in the past many times, how the whole concept of the Sukkah and that concept of this time period, where the whole world will have to come eventually and celebrate the holiday of Sukkot. This represents world redemption. And we call it Hebrew Geula redemption. I'd like to relate it. A friend of mine called me up today and he said, how do you relate, Rabbi, how do you relate to the situation where we know that thousands of terrorists are being released with blood on their hands, murderers that we know they're going to go out there and build the infrastructure for terrorism in the coming decades ahead. And, my answer was, of course, that is obviously a great concern, and Israel's paid terrible prices in the past for release of our precious souls of our country, our people. But today we have to focus on the happiness that these 2 years have been for the families of their beloved ones, that they are in the hands of literally Nazis, murderers that were starving them and torturing them, and the parents didn't have one night they could sleep normally, thinking about if their child is alive, what they're going through, and thank God, that miracle to have them released. We have to today rejoice in that miracle, and especially when we look at the time frame. We see how God is so exact in his bringing about this redemption of those hostages exactly 2 years to the day, literally, of when they were taken in captivity. And tomorrow on Simchat Torah, you could have said to be exactly would have been tomorrow, but no, tomorrow we'll be able to celebrate, which starts tonight. Today they're getting out. Tonight we will dance and celebrate in a complete way with our Torah scrolls and dancing and celebrating not only, of course, our holiday, but we'll have that additional flame of happiness of being able to know that all these hostages that remained alive were returned home. And that's a very great day of rejoicing. And of course, in no way we can push aside and as we say, sweep under the carpet the release of these murderers that got out, and that Israel's going to have to cope with it. Israel's going to have to be strong and to cope with this in the coming weeks, months. I don't know, again, how things are going to unfold. I just said before I give this lesson, or my words, my feelings, I'm going to watch President Trump's speech in the Knesset, and I was watching, very, very attentively to listen to what he had to say. And there's no doubt about it. We're talking about a very, very great friend, a great man who's made history. Donald Trump has made tremendous history in showing his love for the people of Israel. So no doubt we have to be so thankful. And I thank you, Donald Trump, President of the United States. You've done amazing things for Israel. You are the best friend that Israel has ever had in the White House. And we want to thank you for what you've done for Israel. And now I want to go back to the understanding the hostage deal and what's going on and the vision that Donald Trump has, because here I have expressed my disagreement. And I'll start by saying is that there's no way that money, and I spoke about this last time, a couple of days ago when I gave a short lesson on the Nobel Peace Prize, where obviously they're totally political Norwegian committee that if anyone deserved, obviously Donald Trump, what he's done, and he deserved that Nobel Prize. But prizes should never be the thing that ignites us and motivates us. And I'm talking about financial reward in any way. And here, Donald Trump is someone whose whole life has been a moneymaker and a builder, and a deal maker. So that side is very strong, and he feels, okay, we're making a deal now, and the other countries are going to follow suit, and it's going to be okay as long as everyone's financially satisfied. But it doesn't work that way, and we see the radical ideology of the Hamas, that nothing will stop them other than achieving their goal of eradicating Israel. And that is something that, as long as they're in power, as long as that they are bearing weapons and they're and have leadership role in Judea and Samaria, so it's not going to stop. So they're just going to continue to try to figure out a way of regaining more weapons and attempting another October 7th attack on Israel. So that's something that has to be clear. And it's hard for me to believe that Donald Trump actually believes that Hamas, that things could really change. And as far as regarding Hamas, I think it's very clear. He even said that they have to be dismantled. So he knows Hamas is this radical movement that has to be eliminated. But here's where I disagree, is that who's going to be the takeover of Hamas? Who's going to take over? Who's going to be instead of them? And it can't come from Qatar or the Egypt or Turkey. This is a group that has in their beliefs, Muslim Brotherhood. They have the same plan, maybe more tactful, of course, to eliminate Israel. They don't want to see Israel prosper, and putting it lightly, they want to see the destruction of Israel. And they're the ones that they're going to be in charge of dismantling Hamas from their weapons. I mean, it was the Egyptians in the first place that allowed them to smuggle and build up all those underground cells and build a whole country. Like literally, they had their own state of a terrorist state. So that obviously we can't rely on those forces that Trump is saying is going to be involved in. The only way to enforce it, of course, is Israel itself is going to have to enforce its own security and make sure that Hamas is not going to lift its head up. But the problem is, it's not only Hamas in Gaza. The Palestinian Authority, although they have a different party and they're arch enemies of Hamas, I mean, in the past, and it still remains that way. It's not going to change. But they may tactfully try to make some kind of calming period between them. But in reality, they don't agree with one another. But they both think the same way. In other words, they're maybe a little bit more tactful, the Fatah, but they're paying to slay, as we all know. And then this is the way they educate their children. This is the way Judeans are married. Totally, the Arabs living amongst us are totally Hamas way of thinking, or Fatah, the same thing. There's no difference. So we can't say, okay, let them have a role in the leadership in taking over Gaza and et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't make any sense. And here is where I believe is going to be a blow up. Because the countries like Egypt and Qatar and what else we spoke about before, whatever, well, Syria's not so involved, but in reality, the countries that are involved, which is really the Egyptians, Qatar, and Turkey, they want for sure, their whole goal is to have the Palestinian state formed in Israel, taking over Gaza by the Palestinian Authority, and then connecting the dots between some parts of Judea and Samaria and Gaza and creating a Palestinian state. And this, of course, will satisfy the Europeans who are great or trying very, very hard. Macron from France, etc., and all the leader in England and Australia and whatever, the other countries to push a Palestinian state on Israel. And that's what they're going to be doing. I mean, they're going to try to push for that leadership to take over Gaza. And here is going to be a big test for Trump, because Trump has been very careful. He didn't mention the word Palestinian state in his speech at all in the Knesset. And I believe he truly loves Netanyahu, Bibi, and he loves Israel. But here is where he's going to have to make that decision. What is more important to satisfy those lions that want to swallow Israel up by giving them that, and then creating this illusion of some kind of false peace, which is really not going to be peace, but in order to allow for that economical alliance between those countries. And at the same time, Israel, of course, will be suffering because if they try to push a Palestinian state upon us, that's going to be a tragedy for Israel. And so we have to fight against that. That's going to be the next war. Right now, we have a day of celebrating happiness and the return of our hostages. But the big struggle is ahead of us, and that's going to be, we have to be very strong in standing up for our rights and realizing that Israel is only a little tiny dot on the map. And Trump said it himself in his speech. He was so shocked how tiny little Israel is and how much it's done. So we don't want to make it smaller than it is, and we have to fight for our borders, for our homeland, for our God-given land. Oz is part of our everlasting homeland, and that's going to be the struggle in the coming days, months, weeks, whatever you want to call it. How long it's going to take for Israel to stand up for its own self. Survival. So we're not going to go back to that crazy time of Oslo and the time of the disengagement where people were in this kind of living an illusion that we're going to give away our precious homeland to the hands of murderers and expect things to get better tomorrow. It's not the case, and we have to be very strong here. So that's number one. I wanted to set that very, very clear. But I want to talk about my final words here regarding the special day that we are about to enter. Years ago, we have, many years ago, my wife, when she first came to Israel, she did a program and she volunteered in a kibbutz. And she met these two sisters from France. And they were in the process of going through conversion. And they told my wife, then later on became very close with the family. One got married that we became close with. They came to Itamar. And my wife, she was telling her, discussing what made her want to convert to Judaism. And she said, well, she was at the Western Wall, the Kotel. And it was on Simchat Torah. It was on this very special day that we're going to celebrate tonight and tomorrow. And she saw how the honor and the devotion and the singing and the dancing that was done by the people of Israel celebrating the holiday of Simchat Torah and Shmini Atzeret. She was so taken aback, her and her sister, by that they decided that very moment they want to be Jewish. That there's something so special and unique about the love of Torah, the love of and this people of Israel. And that's this very powerful day that's coming in. If we think about the holiday, Shmini Atzeret is the name of the holiday. The official name is Shmini Atzeret, given by the Torah, the 8th day that we come to gather together. And here it's a very private holiday. The first 7 days was a day of the 70 bulls that are offered. The holiday of all nations coming, celebrating with us, and coming to Israel and celebrating. But the holiday of Shmini Atzeret is a very personal side of this, of the end of the holiday, where Israel brings one offering, and it's a very personal holiday where we're celebrating that relationship that we have as the apple of God's eye, the people of Hashem, and we combine it with the completion of our Torah cycle as we read every year, a year cycle of finishing the Torah, which we will do tomorrow when we read Zot HaBracha. This is the blessing that Moshe blesses Israel before he passes away, and he blesses all of the tribes of Israel. And that's, that very powerful holiday we're going to come and celebrate tomorrow, which is really interesting because we have, in Judaism, we have two holidays where we celebrate Torah. And one of them is, as we all know, that's the holiday mentioned in the Torah regarding the giving of the Torah, Chag Shavuot, where we learn Torah at night, and it's there. The celebration is the oral teaching, because we sit there and we study all night long the Talmud and all kinds of things, and we're moving our fingers up and down and discussing the intricate details of Torah, the oral Torah. And that, of course, is unique for those who are scholars. Those who know how to study could get a much greater benefit out of it when they sit down and they study Torah all night long. But the holiday of Simchat Torah is very universal in that way, is that even Jews that are very not so close, very far away from the Torah, but they are connected through the natural connection of to their people. They don't have to be scholars, but they feel that they're part of the nation of Israel, whose bread and butter, whose what can I say? Our whole entire existence is based, of course, on the Torah, and that connects every single Jew, no matter how far away they are, how close they are, how far away they are. Everyone gets together and they dance and they celebrate, and therefore the Torah we celebrate by not studying the Torah, but by hugging the Torah, by grasping the Torah in our arms and dancing and singing, and connecting to the Torah on the influence it has, the light it has, that it radiates to everyone equally as being part of the nation. And that's the beauty of Simchat Torah. 2 years ago, when we were in the midst of our prayers, I'll never forget, I woke up early, I prayed early, I came out, and all of a sudden, I felt something was in the air, but it was too early to really know what was going on. It was before the hour they struck the terrorists, but something was strange because I was looking towards the direction of the hothouses on Etam, and I saw smoke coming out of the hothouses and some fuses that someone makes electricity with the sun and all that, but some of the fuses burnt out and caused a little fire. So that was sort of like a warning, premonition feeling or something. But then we got to the synagogue, and we were in the midst of our prayers, and in the middle of the prayers already, people were we being notified by the army, people being called up and taken out of the synagogue right away, running down south and trying to defend our country. Others were running up north and not knowing what would be with the Hezbollah up north at that time. So that was 2 years ago on this happiest day, where all of Israel is united around the Torah, no matter how far or close they are, as I said before. And the atmosphere, of course, was an atmosphere in the country of division, divide, because of the very extreme radical left, not wanting to accept democratically a change in government, which wanted to make changes, and trying to cause a lot of damage in the country, and then a lot of damage during this whole last 2 years. And that was really pressing on us, and that division and that terrible situation led, of course, all that led to the tragedy that took place on that day. And thank God that now God, after 2 years, after this has been a very, very hard period, the hardest period I can remember in the country, we're now being, again, given an opportunity to reunite, to be happy, to rejoice. And of course, we have to focus on that. At the same time, our hearts are bleeding, our hearts are crying over those dear, precious people that lost their loved ones to murderers that are getting out. And here is this side, which is, again, there's always another side to the picture. And things are very complicated here in Israel. So that's something that we can't at all agree with, and we can't accept. I mean, that's something that's going to be a fact. It's going to happen because it's happening, it happened already. And they're letting them out. And where are they letting some of these murdering animals out to? Right over here in our backyard over here. So we have to be vigilant and realize that the war's not over yet. No, it's not. The war didn't end. Here I disagree again with the words of Donald Trump. That he means he's praying that the war is over, but it's not over, because we're contending with this continuous challenge that we have with these terrorists. And until the way they think is changed, until we succeed in changing the way they think, the war will not really end. And that's really what has to be our focal point. And what can really change the way people think in this world is one thing, and that's the Torah. The light of the Torah is so strong that we have people from all over the world that are not Jewish even, but they see the light of the Torah. As I mentioned, the story of those two sisters that converted. When people see the light that the Torah has, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, from Zion the Torah will come forth, and the light and the word of God from Jerusalem, that can have the effect on the world and changing the way people think, and only that can change it. So my feelings are is what's going to bring about this change in the world is going to be some kind of tremendous explosion of, not a nuclear explosion, right, but a spiritual nuclear explosion that will change the world. And that could only come from the Torah. So we have to brace ourselves and prepare ourselves for that and work on that. We have to work hard towards that. That when people meet the Torah and they meet the ethics of the Torah and the messages behind the Torah, that literally could bring about the change that we really want. And that really can change the world, and not a phony, fake peace that comes about just for convenience, but anything built on convenience and physical monetary reasons, it's not coming from the heart, and something that's going to fall apart. So that's, it connects us to last lesson. And these are my reflections. This is what I feel about the hostage release. And God willing, we're praying for a beautiful, beautiful holiday. And we're looking forward for good days, and let the change come from the Torah. The Torah we're celebrating by dancing and by holding the Torah scrolls. The Torah will change the universe. That's the true answer. Shabbat, well, not Shabbat Shalom now, it's Chag Sameach. Have a happy holiday, and we shall be in touch again soon. Shalom, shalom.